Hello, I'm Jeff Cavins, and today we're looking at the readings for the sixth Sunday in Ordinary Time. You know, so often people who are not a part of the church will look at us and they'll judge Christianity as a religion that stays away from everything. We're separate. We don't do things that the world does. And to a degree, that's true. But that isn't the measure of a Christian. In this week's readings, we're talking about lepers, and we're talking specifically about Jesus touching a leper. Now, we might think today that's not that big of a deal, but back then we have to understand that leprosy was taken very seriously, and that when somebody was diagnosed with leprosy, they were moved out of the community. Life was basically over at that point. They would never be visiting their kids again, and they would never go to a graduation. They'd never sit around the Christmas tree and open up presents with family. But what I want you to understand here is that when someone was a leper, they were disassociated. They were outside of the community, which perhaps was worse than anything. Life was really over. In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 1, we see that Jesus reaches out and he touches a leper. Now, we think that that's a marvelous thing, but back then, people would have been astonished that Jesus would have broken the law, according to Leviticus chapter 13. You didn't touch a leper. But here's what I want you to understand. When it comes to holiness, the Pharisees, whose name means the separate ones, they really delighted in the fact that they were separate. They didn't dance and they didn't chew and they didn't go out with girls who do. They were separate, and their level of holiness was judged by their separateness. But what they failed to understand was that separateness, which began in the Old Testament, was because of their own weakness, their own proclivity to sin. And so God said, you can't do certain things. You can't be with certain people. You can't eat certain things. You have to be separate. But that separateness turned into an opportunity of pride, where they would say, we can't do those things, when in fact, it was originally a kind of a punishment. It was a way of keeping them safe. I remember growing up, and I said to my mom one time, I wanted to stay over at a particular friend's house. His name was Tim. And my mother said, no, you can't stay over there. You see, this young boy by the name of Tim had a reputation for having drugs and alcohol and things in the house, and unsupervised. His parents were gone at night. My mother said no, and I remember saying to her, don't you trust me? And the answer was, no, not right now. I'm going to put a fence up. I'm going to say, you can't go over there. I'm going to protect you. You see, my level of being able to resist sin was not strong enough to overcome the temptation that I might have incurred by going over to Tim's house. So Jesus comes along, and Jesus touches the leper. And the reason that he does is because Jesus' holiness is stronger, more powerful than leprosy. And we are called to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And so we have to ask ourselves, why do I stay away from certain things? Now, there's a certain prudence that we need to walk in. If we have a problem with alcohol, it might not be a good idea to go into a bar. If we have a problem with some other addiction, we want to avoid going down that road. But when it comes to being around people that don't believe like us, we need to raise our level of holiness, that is, our walk with Christ, to the level where we can withstand the influence of this world. So often I've heard parents say to their children, you're not going to do this, or that. And what happens so often is that children are so isolated that they never become strong, and they're not able to withstand the temptations of the world when the parents are removed. I think the strongest way and the most effective way to deal with the influences of the world is to walk in holiness. It's to be with Jesus and to walk in his righteousness. And if we can do that, we can go into any place and have an influence. And he who is greater in me is greater than he who is in the world. And so I would ask you this week to think, who are the lepers in your life? Who are the ones that people say don't have anything to do with them? Ask the Lord if he wants to touch them, and make sure you are walking with the Lord.